Karen Vale stepped off the shuttle and immediately suspected Lysithra Prime had been designed by someone who hated straight lines and sensible lighting. The corridors curved like nervous snakes, the floor glowed faintly with each step, and every hollow panel he passed flashed the same warning. Do not approach Queen Valthera. Some notices added dramatic exclamation marks, others featured stylized lightning bolts, and one had a cartoon figure whose head was literally spinning. Karen assumed that last one was meant to reassure newcomers. It did not. He tried to blend in as he followed the diplomatic crowd toward the reception hall, but his boots squeaked traitorously on the polished nanoglass floor. A few guests glanced at him, mostly humans, with the occasional tall Lysithran whose long elven ears twitched like antennae scanning for trouble. Their elegant features made him feel like he'd wandered into the wrong genre, and he half expected someone to ask if he'd lost his way to the fantasy convention. Inside the hall, floating drones navigated the space with trays of luminous appetizers, though they seemed to avoid him in particular, drifting away every time he reached for something. The human delegation gathered on one side, the Lysithrans on the other, leaving a polite and very empty zone in the center where the queen stood in still, regal silence. No one dared cross the invisible boundary around her. Even the drones detoured widely, as if programmed with a strong sense of self-preservation. Karen, in his ongoing tradition of accidental misfortune, stepped into that forbidden zone without noticing. One moment he was trying to chase down a floating skewer of something purple and wobbly. The next he felt the air thrum, as if the entire station had inhaled sharply. Queen Valthera turned toward him. Her gaze locked onto his with a calm curiosity that felt slightly illegal. The room froze. Conversations died mid-sentence. Someone somewhere dropped a glass with the soft chime of tragedy. Then the queen walked straight toward him, each step sending a faint ripple through the air. Her long ears angled forward, subtle and deliberate, like a pair of finely tuned instruments reading a frequency only she could hear. And without hesitation, she sat beside him, close enough that the crowd collectively leaned back. "You resonate," she said, her voice low and almost amused. "Your mind hums at a frequency unfamiliar yet compatible." Karen attempted a smile that probably qualified as a cry for help. "Is that good? Because I've been told my mind hums mostly when I haven't eaten." A flicker of laughter shimmered in her expression. "It is unexpected." Around them, diplomats whispered theories ranging from political disaster to cosmic romance. Karen just wanted a snack and maybe a manual titled, "What to Do When the Alien Queen Sits Beside You on Purpose." But Valthera kept studying him, as if she'd found something rare. And when the drones finally dared to approach again, they dropped their entire trays in their panic, scattering glowing cubes across the floor like a sign that nothing about this encounter was going to remain simple. Karen Vale had been on Lysithra Prime for exactly 17 minutes when he realized the station's security officers took their jobs far too seriously. 4 of them escorted him through the curving passageways as if he were a suspicious package that might explode into bad paperwork at any moment. They insisted he had accidentally interfered with a psionic protocol, which sounded dramatic enough that he briefly wondered if he should apologize to the nearest air vent. They finally stopped before a crystalline doorway that shimmered as though made of frozen starlight. The tallest officer cleared his throat. "She is waiting inside." "She?" Karen asked, hoping she meant a therapist or maybe someone who served calming beverages. But when the doors parted, he stepped into a chamber that hummed with an aurora of psionic energy, and there, standing in the center, was the alien queen herself. Her long, pointed ears glowed faintly at the edges. A sign he had learned meant she was concentrating or perhaps contemplating whether to vaporize someone. She regarded him with a mild expression, the kind a teacher might give a student who inexplicably brought a goat to class. "You came." "I was strongly encouraged," Karen said, glancing back at the officers. They immediately pretended they weren't eavesdropping. Valthera gestured him closer. The moment he stepped forward, the air vibrated softly, like the station had discovered a new way to sigh. Colors rippled across the floor, reacting to his presence with an enthusiasm he did not share. "This chamber amplifies mental frequencies," she explained. "I wish to observe yours." That's flattering, he said. Most people just ask how my day's going. She tilted her head, ears angling toward him as if tuning to a private broadcast. The chamber responded instantly. Gravity hiccuped, lifting him an inch off the floor. Karen flailed in slow, ungainly spirals. Is this normal? For you, she said entirely too calmly. He rotated upside down, drifting past her at an undignified angle. I'd like to file a complaint with physics. Valthera raised a hand, and the chamber steadied, lowering him gently. Your mind harmonizes with my field, she said. Untrained, raw, yet strangely complementary. That sounds like something a dating app would say before crashing. A faint spark of amusement warmed her expression. This resonance is rare, dangerous to ignore. Karen looked around at the glowing walls, the trembling floor, the air thick with psionic pressure. Ignoring things is kind of my specialty, but I'm guessing that's not an option? Not if you wish the station to remain intact, she replied. He sighed. Fine, I'll cooperate. But if I start floating again, I want hazard pay. Her ears twitched softly, almost like a smile. Noted. Karen Vale had no idea how his day had escalated from find the cafeteria to form a possibly history-altering mental bond with an alien queen. But he suspected the universe had skipped a few steps in between. Now he found himself sitting across from Valthera in a quiet observation lounge perched above Lysithra Prime's shimmering atmosphere. The glass domes overhead showed pale storms swirling far below, but Karen was more concerned with the way the queen kept watching him, as though he were a puzzle piece that belonged to a much larger, more alarming set. You are unsettled, she said gently, her long ears tilting toward him with the same precision the station used when adjusting its orbit. I'm not unsettled, he said. I'm atmospherically challenged. That is not a phrase. It is now. Her lips curved in a tiny, dignified, almost smile. Your humor is a shield, and your psionic vibe is making my teeth buzz. That is simply resonance adjusting to proximity, she said. If the frequency were unstable, your bones would vibrate at mismatched intervals. He blinked. I am begging you to stop describing things that sound like medical emergencies. Before she could respond, the lounge doors slid open and two ministers hurried in, arguing in sharp whispers. They froze the moment they saw Karen and Valthera seated together, as if they had just walked in on someone hugging a live reactor core. One minister cleared his throat. Your Majesty, is this arrangement safe? Valthera answered calmly. If it were unsafe, the wall behind you would currently be melting. The minister took a very quiet, very careful step away from the nearest wall. Karen leaned toward her. Are you joking or threatening? Yes, she murmured. The ministers hastily excused themselves, practically tripping over each other as the doors sealed behind them. Karen exhaled. They really don't know what to do with us, do they? They fear what they cannot measure, she replied. For years they believed my psionic storms were unpredictable. Now they see that you stabilize them. You change the equations. Karen rubbed his face. I'm a surveyor. My most dangerous equation involves fuel rations and the number of coffees I can sneak before someone notices. And yet, she said softly, your presence quiets the storms I have fought all my life. He looked up, startled. There was no regal mask now, no distant composure, only tired honesty. It made the room feel smaller, closer. Karen Vale, she said, your mind carries an echo I have not sensed in any human, a harmonic that should not exist. I do not know why it does. That makes two of us. She reached out, not touching him, but letting her hand hover near his. The air rippled faintly, warm and electric. There is more beneath this resonance. A memory, perhaps. A fragment of something shared long before either of us lived. Karen swallowed. That sounds big. It is, she admitted, and dangerous to uncover. A soft tremor passed through the station, lights flickering, floor humming. Valthera's ears snapped upward in alarm. That was not me, she said quietly. Is that good news? Karen asked. No, it means someone else is trying to imitate our frequency. Karen stood quickly, nearly knocking over his chair. Okay, new rule. No one should imitate anything involving me in psionics. Valthera rose beside him, her expression sharpening with worry. If they succeed, they could tear open a storm that Lysithra Prime cannot survive. He stared at her. So, we should probably go stop that? Yes, she said, her eyes glowing faintly. Together. Karen Vale had expected many things from life. Failure, caffeine dependency, the occasional awkward conversation. But he had never imagined sprinting through Lysithra Prime's lower rings beside an alien queen who radiated enough psionic force to give the station mild heartburn. The corridors here were older, built before designers decided that everything needed to glow, so the shadows clung to them like gossip waiting to happen. Ahead, a pulse of unstable energy flickered, rattling pipes and making the lights sneeze in protest. "They're close," Valthera said, her long ears angled forward. "The resonance is crude, forced. Whoever is attempting this does not understand the strain." Karen muttered. "Fantastic. A rogue amateur psychic. Those always end well." She shot him a sideways glance. "Your humor remains remarkably steady in crisis. It's either that or scream, and I'm saving the screaming for emergencies." They reached the sub-ring's central chamber, where three scientists huddled around a humming device that looked suspiciously like a toaster made by someone who hated kitchens. The machine spat arcs of psionic static, growing louder with each pulse. Karen felt the vibration in his teeth again, this time sharper, as if the device resented his existence. One of the scientists whirled around. "Stay back. We're stabilizing her frequency. We can replicate the effect without the human." "You are destabilizing me," Valthera warned. "And the station." Karen stepped forward before he realized he was doing it. "Look, I don't know what you think you're fixing, but if that thing blows, we won't have a station left to argue in." The machine shrieked, an electronic tantrum, and suddenly Karen felt himself pulled toward it, not physically but mentally, as though it were trying to scrape resonance out of his skull. Valthera moved instantly, placing her hand on his shoulder. The world steadied. The psionic field softened around him like a storm calming under warm rain. "Follow my thoughts," she said. "That feels like a terrible idea," he replied, "but okay." Their connection snapped into alignment like two notes finding harmony. The machine flickered, confused by the stable frequency now resonating between them. Valthera guided the energy, channeling it not outward but inward, folding the storm back into stillness. The device sputtered, wheezed, and died with a pitiful spark. The scientists stared in stunned silence. Karen exhaled shakily. "Next time you want to test something dangerous, ask for a volunteer who's not me." Valthera turned to him, her expression softened by quiet pride. "Your mind has become steadier, sharper. You have grown into the resonance instead of fleeing from it." He didn't know how to respond to that, so he said, "I blame you." A reasonable conclusion. Later, as Lysithra Prime settled back into calm orbit, Karen and Valthera stood at the observation deck, watching the gas giant swirl below. The political factions had stopped panicking, mostly now that the crisis had passed. Negotiations had begun anew, this time with far less screaming. Karen leaned on the railing. "So what now? Galactic destiny? More floating?" "Perhaps," she said. "But whatever comes, we face it linked, harmonized." He nodded. "Could be worse. At least you're good company." "And you," she replied, "are no longer afraid." Karen considered that. For once, the buzzing in his bones felt less like danger and more like possibility. A new frequency, a new beginning. The station hummed around them, not warning, but welcoming.